We are live, guys. Hey, everyone from around the world. Today we're celebrating Community Manager Appreciation Day 2016. Community Manager Appreciation Day is always the fourth Monday of each January. It was started 7 years ago by Jeremiah Owang as a way to just celebrate community managers. This has been our fourth year doing broadcasts throughout the day, bringing people all around the world, talking about community management, different topics and different flavors, really, from all over. And this will be our third year of doing awards for community managers. We're really excited about that. In fact, we had over 300 nominations for community managers this year and saw lots of new names and faces. So our very first panel is Community Management and the Transformation of Work. And it is brought to you by Ann. We're going to turn things over to Ann, and we'll see you guys in about 50 minutes.
Okay, thanks everybody, and very excited to be kicking off the first panel session from the future. Really, this is down here in Australia. It's Monday afternoon, so we've almost finished our day as you guys started. But it's a great way to start. I think Brucetti was celebrating community managers, and we thought we might kick off this transformation of work. It's not really a celebration. One of the questions we wanted to start with was Microsoft's axing the CSM roles at the end of last week and what this might actually imply for community managers. So I'm going to introduce the panel and ask you as we go through our panel what your initial thoughts are around the impact of community management and what sort of message Microsoft is sending us on that one. Rhiannon, if you unmute yourself, if you'd like to give us a quick introduction and say hi, and then tell us what you think about this. So someone that has used a lot of Yammer and you know, been quite involved in it. What are your thoughts?
Thanks, Anne. So my name is Rhiannon. I'm the founder and chief ninja of a management consulting firm in Brisbane. So as Anne said, it's about 3 o'clock my time, a little bit in front of Sydney. But I focus on, I guess, helping businesses build better culture by engaging their people. So for me, the Microsoft CSM's axing is probably the only nice way of putting it. It shocked me a bit. I work really closely with Microsoft guys. I have done for a number of years, particularly the guys in the APAC, but also engaged with the guys in the US, helping them run some Yam Jams around community management. And to me, the impact it'll have on community management will be that it's going to force the community to do a lot more co-creating and crowdsourcing of solutions. Obviously, Microsoft is a complex beast. I won't even try to imagine what the rationale behind it is, but I think it's almost going to force much bigger connections. And as I've experienced in LinkedIn in the last 2 days, I've had, I reckon, 100 connection requests from people that I know from Yammer and from Microsoft because of it. So I think it's really just going to force people's hands to be a bit more self-sufficient. But I think it's a bit of a sad indication on what it might mean, I guess, more broadly for people that aren't well connected.
Sorry, I was muted then. Okay, thanks, Rhiannon. That's a really interesting sort of start, and the connections where the community is starting to look after itself is only just really kicking off, isn't it, through LinkedIn? Let me see, Van has just sent us a message that he's pulling out. So just to keep this sort of gender neutral, why don't we hand over to Tony? So if you unmute yourself, Tony, give us a quick introduction and then your thoughts around the Microsoft axing of their CSM roles.
Hi, this is Tony Woodall. I'm the internal community manager for First Republic Bank in San Francisco, California. Relatively new at that role, and honestly, I was not aware of Microsoft and that axing, so I don't have a lot to say about it. I think that you know, in the area that I'm in, it seems to be that, you know, community management is actually growing here, so I don't know that it's a necessarily ominous word that's happening, but I'm not sure, like I said, about Microsoft. I have not heard anything about that. So
Okay, thanks, Tony. We will loop you back on some other thoughts around some of these things. Just to again move across perhaps to T or Teresa, if you want to unmute yourself and introduce and tell us what your thoughts are. You've worked closely with Microsoft in previous years. What are you thinking?
Thanks, Dan. So yeah, I'm Teresa North, and my company is Water Cooler Communication, and I help clients with internal comms, so more and more increasingly around the social side. I'm similar. I didn't know the news. I just got the article come through before this panel, so I hadn't heard about that. But I am, and as you say, I have been associated with Microsoft for a while, so I wouldn't like to comment on why the changes happened. I haven't seen any of the official communication, but I think it's a shame. You know, from what I've seen of those roles, they do make a big difference. And you know, Yammer and Microsoft are such different organisations, or certainly Yammer was prior to coming into Microsoft. So you kind of see the way that Yammer operate and hope that that would continue into the future. You know, the fact that they don't communicate on email. They do truly use Yammer for all that communication. You know, that's quite different to the Microsoft world. So, so I don't know. I don't know what it means for the future. But certainly, in terms of community management and the community managers that I work with, they're always looking for that link. Who can help us with Yammer? Who can come in and just get us started and point us in the right direction, or help us with our community if it's you know, lagging a bit. So, be interesting to see what happens.
Great, thanks T. And James, down in Sydney, Australia, well, even south of Sydney, Australia, would you like to introduce yourself and add a few comments around the Microsoft CSM roles?
Oh, hello Anne. Well, you and T know me, and Rhiannon as well, of course. So I work with Anne. I guess actually this afternoon, this morning, I was really hoping just to hear what some of the other panelists were thinking around this, but just some and sort of reflect back on that, and just some immediate observations. I think were, as Tony was saying, wasn't really aware of the CSM role, and that even it had been disbanded. And I think that's quite interesting in a way when we talk about community management within the enterprise and what its role is in the workplace. I see, compared to externally focused, consumer-focused community management, that there's sort of very two distinct worlds, and then within that workplace community management role, we're actually quite isolated. And I think to the point about what does it mean about the Microsoft getting rid of its CSM network, is that really they were trying to get people to focus less on the technology and really focus on that workforce transformation, about employee engagement. And you know, the network of community managers within the workplace is perhaps so spread out and disconnected, is that we often spend a lot of time reinventing the wheel. And I think that was the key thing about the CSM role. They were really trying to drive change, but they're actually trying to connect people and upskill all those different community managers who are working with Yammer. So yes, it's a bit of a shame that it's happened.
Oops. There, thanks, James. I think that it's an interesting point, isn't it? And Tony, I'm going to loop back to you and sort of ask the question: where do community managers fit into an organisation? And perhaps from your personal experience, where does your role fit in the hierarchy of things? And do you see that changing?
Our role in and we have a group called the Enterprise Collaboration Team that runs our community management group. We have myself, who's in charge of the overall product that we work on. We use Jive as our internal social intranet currently, and we're actually building some additional features in there with SharePoint and things. But we have our group is centered in the actual executive branch. It's such a high-profile target that we have to use community management and use, you know, social intranet internally to help drive the engagement with our users and help share our corporate culture, you know, throughout the entire company, and help people become socially, you know, build their social acumen so that they can make it in this digital world that we now have in the banking environment and financial services. It's becoming more digital, getting in touch with your customers. We're very relationship based, and that's where we feel the community managers work very closely with that to share that relationship within the environment, our internal environment, as well as externally with our clients. So we consider this one of our high profile and executive level roles within the community management of our system. So
great, that's really interesting. And Tony, I do love your background picture there on the beach. That's where most of us Aussies would be down there if we had a choice.
Yes, I don't blame you. Since all the Aussies, I like the beach, and it looks better than my laundry room back here. So.
Thanks, Tony. Rhiannon, there's an interesting comments from Tony that their community management is seen as a critical role in the executive team. What's your experience of the people that you work with? Are they at executive level? Are they profiled? Where are they sitting?
Look, my experience is there's always a broad, diverse range of where community managers are sitting, whether they're in internal comms, corporate comms, whether they're sitting in a strategy team, an innovation team, or whether, like Tony says, they're in an executive type team. To me, it doesn't matter what team they sit in. It's about the fact that they've got the right sponsorship at a senior level to empower them to do what they need to do, and that you've selected the right people for the job. Without a passion and a tenacity and a resilience and someone who's going to give it a good red hot go, to use some Aussie vernacular, I don't think it actually matters that much. But it does matter that they've got the right support and the right access to the right people to be able to get on with the job.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Rhiannon. T, what are you thinking around that? How many community managers that you work with, coming from that sort of internal comms perspective, how many do you see sitting with at least executive contact?
Yeah, well, I guess I would reiterate what Rhiannon was just saying, that they can be anywhere or any role. I mean, you see sometimes people doing it off the side of their desk, so that's not uncommon. There may be an internal comms manager who has 20% of their role is supposed to be managing the social community, or it could be, and you know this, Anne, I tried to hire a really senior role for one of my clients last year here in Australia, and the job description was very much at that level of interacting with the executive team, training the executive team, reporting on what's going on within the organisation, because they were, I guess, the social media spy who was, really listening to what was going on. We failed to find that person here in Sydney. We're more likely to find someone at that mid-level at the moment, where it's a very, very capable person that's got lots of experience, maybe having come from internal comms into the intranet channels and then moving into digital. It's really got some great experience and can do some great things for the community, but probably aren't getting exposed to the executive team, because that might go through the head of internal comms, for example. So I'm seeing them a lot, some fantastic people, maybe at the mid-level, but then you go into the bigger organisations like Telstra, where there are whole teams, designed to work on the social network, and senior directors managing the team. So yes, varying very much from organisation to organisation.
It's interesting. I wonder if our experience in Australia is slightly different to the US, if we're less or more mature. James, we've started to sort of touch on the capabilities of community managers, but what do you sort of see is that you've been doing a lot of research in the professional services and their uptake of digital and disruption and all those things. Where are community managers sitting in that research?
Well, I'd like to say that they're quite firmly in the middle of it, and certainly there are some people who are both in that role of community manager and are part of that digital disruption that's going on within their organisations. I think what is interesting, I was having a conversation the other day with someone around this, is this concept of stewardship, and that's what I don't necessarily coming through in all the conversations about community management inside the workplace. And by stewardship, I mean it's not just a question of having people who are online and engaging with people, trying to drive that conversation, that sort of cultural communication, if you like. But there's also a need to actually help people make use of the tools in a sort of productive way as well. And that needs to be integrated across other parts of the business, not just around the internal comms role, not just around HR. So I think we've still got a way to go, but I'm not yet really clear that the community managers have really come into their sort of the top of the arc of where they could be. So there's this concept of stewardship that I think that's got to come through.
Tony, because I'll swim back to you as our overseas guest. What are your thoughts listening to us talking about these sort of capabilities and James is talking about the stewardship? Have you got any experiences or thoughts around where that's sitting and evolving?
Well, I think that our group, like I said, I'm relatively new in the internal community manager role. We have a lot of different departments that have their own communities within our larger community, and I had managed a couple of the smaller departmental community groups within our platform. And I think that being in that community manager role is very important to get that engagement with the people that you're working with, and being a thought leader, it helps get that out there, get the information out there for the community, get your advocates, and they go out and share that information. So I think with that role, it's starting to grow, at least in our area, in our industry, and in our company specifically. It's becoming a more advanced role. It's just trying to get the people to buy into it, and that's a lot of the people that are being tasked with the role are not familiar with it, nor do they seem to have the time to do it because they have other jobs as well. So I think as they're starting to realize the benefit of it and what being the community manager can help them become a not a subject matter expert but an influencer within the company and within their departments, it helps them grow within that role. So I think it's because it's relatively, we've only been doing having that particular role within the last couple of years, but it's starting to really grow within the company, and the impact that they're having within their own communities is starting to take effect and to be realized. So
yeah, that's great, really interesting. I mean, communities of practice are not a new concept. Communities of practice have been around for quite a while, but they seem to not be related directly to the community management that we're speaking about. Rhiannon, what does community management mean to you? What is that role? Can you sum it up?
Yeah, and I think it's about connection and collaboration. It's about connecting hearts and minds, whether it's business to consumer, business to business, or business to employees. In my sense, it's the work I focus on is business to employees and vice versa. I think it's about it's really about knowing, influencing, and connecting, sharing knowledge, and as we've been talking about, building a real sense of a collective, collaborative culture.
So T, what are the skills or capabilities that they need if we're connecting and sharing and influencing? What are those? What are we looking for when we look for community managers? Are they special people, or are they just someone that needs to learn how to do something?
Neat. A big thing for me is you've really got to know the organisation. So it's you might be looking at someone who isn't really familiar with social per se or the tool, but is very influential around the organisation, not because they're senior, but because they're just an absolutely fantastic networker. So someone like that could come in and quickly learn the ropes of the tool, but have those amazing connections. So social animal would be certainly one thing I'd be looking for, and someone that just has a passion for social. I mean, a lot of what I help my clients with is looking for the champions, so not just the community manager themselves, but that whether they're the ambassadors or the champions or whatever it is relating to the tool. We're looking for people that just love social, so do a lot of social activity outside of the organisation, or have been the ones that have been saying for ages, can we get a social tool? You know, they make great champions or community managers. Personally, I'd be looking for people that can produce good content, because certainly in the beginning, the community manager will be pushing out a lot of content, so that would be something for me. I'd be looking for someone with good writing skills, and also someone that does have that executive credibility, because hopefully you would get to that point where that person can really influence because of what they know. They're so familiar with what's going on in the organisation. Like I always try to say to my community managers, see if we can get you a spot on the executive team meeting on a Monday morning, and you can talk about the top 3 positive things that happen in the business that you've seen on the community, and those 3 things, the red flags as well that we need to. So really position yourself as the person in the know that can help the executive team. So there's probably a long list, but I don't want to talk for too long. They'll probably be my main things.
Thanks, T. James, T mentioned content then, and I think we don't always hear that as part of what community managers do. You know, Rhiannon talked about the social side of it and being the influencer, and then we sort of pick up the tool comes second. The content's quite an interesting concept. In those professional services organisations you've been researching, do they talk about that as part of a community or a community manager's role, or are they looking for something else?
Well, that's a really good question, because I think as you go across industries, what the role of the community manager is going to be potentially quite different. I think there's a commonality at this stage of where we are with using you know, social tools inside the workplace, where you do need people who are, as T was saying, generating content as part of that drive to create engagement. But I think, you know, we could almost say the model is, you know, I'm just looking at my notes, there's connecting, there's collaborating, but there's also that idea of content curation. That sort of also brings us to this idea maybe of bringing across some models from elsewhere, where we've looked at things around there's collaboration, there's coordination, there's communication, the sort of, I've forgotten the 4th C, but there's 4 Cs in terms of what we could be doing. So sometimes content is going to be important, other times it's about connecting people. But I think there are other possibilities in that mix as well. I think as well, if we're asking about what community management looks like in the workplace, and I'm just watching the Twitter stream as well, as well as talking about what are the capabilities, maybe we should also talk about where does it actually literally fit, because I think that might determine what the role or skills of that community manager are going to be. You know, is it internal comms? Is it marketing? Is it HR? Is it IT even? I think again that will shape the flavour of what your internal community manager is going to look like.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Where do you fit? You said you're part of the executive team. Are you attached to comms, HR, or are you completely as a separate group?
We are a separate group. Our enterprise collaboration team reports directly to, you know, our executive team. But we are very closely aligned with our marketing department. We spend a lot of time within our marketing department and our digital channels team working together. But we do report upline to the executive management team. And then, like I said, I am the internal community manager responsible for gathering and educating other departmental community managers that have, you know, their own communities that we build within the Jive platform that we use. And you know, I think you have to have that level of executive buy-in to make, you know, this particular work. You already have enough trying to get buy-in and get, you know, adoption of this type of platform, especially trying to get social into a financial services firm is very difficult. They don't really do social very well a lot of times. So, you know, luckily our company believes in, you know, social importance and, you know, becoming a social business and using that as a tool to help and benefit their clients. So when they brought this in, it was an executive program, so that's one of the good things. We do report up to executive, but we involve all aspects of the business. Each one of the departments has their own communities that they build, and they have their own community managers within those departments that control their own communities. The adoption, the content, they write their own content, or at least they're supposed to. They do all of the work along with our team. We help guide them and educate them in what they do, but we are from the executive side. I'm not an executive, but we report up to the executive team because it is such an important aspect of our, company's thought processes and our values that we have. We are a relationship business. We just happen to be a bank, and our goal is to work with our clients and be able to communicate with them, whether it's through social or personal interaction, or I should say digital social, or internal in-person social. So we try to make sure that our employees understand how to do that and get involved as well. So it's being able to drive that and use the system, to build efficiencies as well. So.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and I like the concept you have where each department's got their own community managers as well, so they're kind of localizing their content and their knowledge within that field rather than just being, an overall specialist. I think that's perhaps something really interesting. I haven't seen a lot of that out here in Australia, and maybe that's the size of our organisations as well. Rhiannon, just thinking, have you seen that sort of structure where there's an overall responsibility, but then each department's got their own community management? And I guess that begs the question, should everybody have some kind of community management skill in their digital capabilities? What do you think, Rhiannon?
Yeah, look, I think more and more so now people are going to need to be more digitally savvy and build their digital acumen. In terms of that structure where there's, I guess, clusters of community managers with a role to play, I haven't seen that as such here, but again, it might be the size of the organisations that we've got here and the size of the businesses that I'm working in. Like, I'd take me, for example, when I was last an employee, I was a community manager, but I was also a HR director, and I was the only community manager in a business of 9,500 employees. And I gave it about 10% of my daytime to doing that job. So, look, I think the more entrenched adoption of social becomes inside enterprises, the more digitally savvy the business, the leaders, and employees are going to be, just through a natural process of it becoming more commonplace. But absolutely, look, digital skills are, I think there's a big gap in a lot of people in terms of how they are digitally adopting, how much resistance there can be from time to time. But I also think something James touched on before about around content curation. Also think there's a role for community managers to play around process integration. So trying to take a process that exists in a business and socialize it, for want of a better term, or make it applicable no matter what platform you're using. Find a way to make that process work digitally and socially so that you can, again, continue to ingrain social into the business, and it just becomes the way we do things.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of talking in the ideal world, isn't it? It's just the way we do things, and it stops being such a sort of separate task. I guess it sort of then leads the question to how many organisations that you work with are actually measuring the impact of their communities and can report back to executive. Tony, I'm sure your lot do, but T, are you seeing that impact being reported? Are people taking responsibility for it and saying your internal community is really powerful, this is what they've done, this is what they can do for you?
Yeah, I think people are trying to, speaking just from experience of my clients. They don't always have the tools, so people want the data to be able to say, look, this is the benefit our community is bringing, and can we invest more in it? Can we have a dedicated person? Can to say how important they are? But often unless you're going to invest in a measurement tool, that data might not be very forthcoming. So I see with, going back to a previous point, I think it's hard just to get resource at the moment. More and more I see, even with my internal comms teams, having to fight for headcount. Okay, we've got a 6,000 person business and we've got half an internal comms person. And then on top of that, you're also trying to have the conversation of, and we need a community manager. So we need the data, we need the measurement to say this is, how important our tool is, and therefore can we invest in it. But then you don't always have the resource to be able to be pulling that data and making the case. So it's a little bit chicken and egg. I know certainly all of my clients who I work with want that data, and then you can make the case for more resource. But I think a lot of the time we're given our view on what we believe to be the case. We spend all our time in the community, so we have a good idea of what's working and what's not working, but we maybe don't have the data that some of our execs would like to see to back it up.
Yeah, that's a really great point, isn't it? We're so in the communities doing things that it is sometimes challenging to be able to sort of pull back and look at that from an impact perspective. James, do you have thoughts around that sort of measurement aspect?
Well, I think I just want to concur with that point. Is the community managers, when they're working inside the workplace, they're embedded in what they're doing, and they just know the value they're providing. But then they get pulled in front of a management team or the board to justify what they're doing. Or as T was saying, I need more headcount. How do I justify that? So for rightly or wrongly, we need measurement. And for a while, I think the internal community managers were really the poor cousins of the social media community managers, who had some great tools for measuring. But I think in a way, actually, it may have flipped. I think at this point in time, we've actually now got access to better tools if companies are willing to subscribe to them to help them measure. Because the one advantage you have inside companies is we actually know who the users are. There's no guessing. Is Fluffy Bunny 33 the CEO, or just the guy who looks after the stationery cabinet? We've got that data, so we can actually have more insight into what's going on. But the issue I'm seeing historically is people don't want to invest in that measurement, or they want to invest only at the very end. And I think whatever you're doing right now, if you're an internal community manager, my big piece of advice would be go out and start some measurement today, because then you've got a baseline to measure against. That's the only way that you can really demonstrate improvement, is if you've got something to measure against. But the tools are there. But again, organisations have got to be willing to invest in those tools.
So what are we measuring? And again, this is a question we often get asked as well, and I'm sure the others are familiar. What do you measure?
Yeah.
Oh, I've got some. I see people on Yammer and they say, oh, they've got. They did 40 posts this week. They're really great. And I go, no, they don't have any work to do. What else?
Yeah.
So what do you think around that?
Well, yeah, that's where we've got this advantage. One, we know who the employees are, and we can. And we've been working with Swoop Analytics to look at their social network-based measurement tool. And the great thing about that is we're no longer just talking about page views or even counting likes. We can actually delve in and look at the relationships between people. We can say, is the HR team working closely enough with the internal comms team? Or is there a team somewhere that isn't connected with anyone? And we can actually then go out and find out why, or even design strategies that actually that are designed to deal with that gap. And in the past we didn't have tools like Swoop Analytics, but we've now got that ability to really put them, apply a microscope onto an internal social network and look at what's happening. And almost actually, I think pretty much in real time. As soon as that data is in the system, we can pull that out and have a look at it. So yeah, these tools are really making a difference. But the key thing is, it's not just measuring the network. We actually know who those people are in the network, and you combine that social network analysis with that knowledge. You've actually got you've got the ability to really make some key insights into what's going on inside your community.
Tony, are you using analytics to report impact within your role?
Absolutely. I run a monthly report on all of our systems to share with everybody what the top communities are within our organization. We also I run weekly reports to keep track of everything we track. our registered users that have access to the system that actually sign on and things like that. And then we have those who are active who actually go in and look at content and view items. Then we also try to track who the participants are, who participates by doing likes and comments and things like that. And then those that actually create, our contributors, is a much lower percentage, but our active users, we track that very actively to see how many people are in there trying to get information from the system. And then within that, we also track all of the content that we have to see what our top 30, for example, top 30 pieces of content are, what they are. And we do graphs on each one of those to see what the most popular are and report those to management and to our community managers through the whole time. So every week we do that. So it helps us to see who's our active users, who our active communities are within our departments, and then we also report on those, like I said, every week and every month. We just had one of our internal users. We also do gamification and points within our system that helps to help motivate people. And we have one particular person who's over 100,000 points, which is one of our top levels within the system, and she's wasn't even a community manager. She just does a lot of content curation. She blogs a lot. She puts out a lot of good content. But we track all of that information out there to help drive that adoption and get people interested in the system. So, and I think it's critical to be able to show that to the executives.
Yeah, did they take notice? That was my next thing, because we can produce a lot of these reports. Management understanding, when you provide that information to them, are they understanding the power of what's happening?
They really do, and in a lot of our different executive meetings or our meetings with all of our sales teams and things, the executives always are talking about, the solution. We call it Collaborate, but our social intranet, and they're always talking about it. Our marketing team is the one who's always number one, and they provide a lot of content, so they always talk about it, and everybody asks, is that on Collaborate, whenever somebody asks about something. So the executive team is actually a big proponent of the system today and have really started to buy in even more, so they're seeing how these numbers get things, get people involved, and how we share that information. And again, they're a big part of our organization is our culture, and they see the benefit of sharing that corporate culture throughout the organization on these platforms. So.
Yeah, it's great to hear you mentioning the culture and how that is supported through the community management and the community and collaboration itself, because I think people often miss that aspect of it. I'm going to hand it over to James now. James has been doing a lot of research into the future of the workplace and flexible working, remote working, all those other terms that you might want to use. And he's got some sort of specific questions around the role of community management in these flexible workforces. So James, it's your turn to take the lead seat.
Thank you, Anne. Yeah, so I've got a couple of questions to start the ball rolling, and Rhiannon, hopefully you're ready to answer, just to give you a bit of a heads up of which direction I'm going around the panel. So yeah, I've been looking at the digital workplace and the future of work, and obviously one of the big things that's coming up, at least in Australia, is that this interest in flexible working. I know also I've heard from some of my European friends that there's a lot of interest in remote work or telework, where people don't even come into the office anymore. But it's kind of interesting, though. Some research I read recently is that as a result of this greater support for flexible working, and of course there's always been people like salespeople that have been out of the office, but now just about anyone can work from home or work from a cafe, is that our offices are sometimes becoming quite lonely. And I just wonder if, Rhiannon, what do you think of the role of community managers and the platforms that community managers use to maybe help keep that social cohesion in the workplace, even if we're working as we all are at home today?
Yeah, thanks, James. Look, I think you're absolutely right. The role a community manager can play in connecting people, not only that are choosing to work flexibly, but that might be regionally located. For example, one of the last communities I formerly managed, we had 8 employees in Mount Isa, and for anyone that ever looks on a map, Mount Isa is a really, really, really long way away from Brisbane. And so we used one of the employees up in Mount Isa to be one of our unofficial Yammer champions, and she did a stellar job. It gave her an opportunity to connect, gave her career progression, because people suddenly saw that there were people out there, and it just gave other people that were regionally located or choosing to work flexibly an opportunity to, I guess, engage. I most recently was working as a consultant for one of the big tech consulting firms, and I reckon in 6 months I spent about 8 days in the office. The rest of the time I was either with clients, working off-site, or working at home. And Yammer for me, and Facebook to a certain extent, gave me an opportunity to, I guess, remain connected. So I think the community managers have a really critical role to play in, I guess, keeping the web of connections connected and, I guess, together.
It's interesting that you mentioned both Facebook and Yammer, and almost the idea that perhaps they are working together. Do you think there is a challenge within the enterprise that, great, we've got a tool like Yammer, it can help our workforce to stay socially cohesive, but at the same time we'd rather you weren't posting kitten pictures on the network? Yeah.
Absolutely. I used to have a hashtag no cat photos allowed rule, and look, absolutely, I think the more organisations become comfortable with social within the enterprise, I think the bigger the blurring of the line might become with tools like Instagram and Facebook, and to a certain extent Twitter, where there's probably a lot more freedom. But again, as you said earlier, you're inside the enterprise, you're an enterprise tool, no matter what the platform, you're going to have some rules and guidelines, and also your personal brand's at risk. If you're posting cat photos, you're certainly not going to be able to influence a senior leader to buy into your project if that's all they're seeing in their following stream. So I think, yeah, there's certainly a blurring of the lines. I think Facebook at work, to chuck that in as a platform option, I think that, again, could certainly, look, I haven't seen it on hand on heart, I haven't seen it, but I think there would certainly be a degree of confusion, so some good change management and some good, I guess, platform education would be needed around which tool when, I guess.
Great, thank you. T, you often work at quite a senior level within organisations, and what do you think the perception is of senior management at this point in time about the use of enterprise social networks like Yammer, Jive, and so on, for not just hosting, I guess, business-focused conversations? You know, how can we improve this product, or customers are telling us this, but you know, these very simple water cooler kind of exchanges. Are they comfortable with that idea, or you know, or they just think that's not something that should happen on a social network inside the workplace?
It really varies from organisation to organisation, and I do see some extremes. So you know, one of my clients, we launched Yammer a year or so ago, and the senior management are very pro having a social tool. It came from the top, the push to have Yammer, but then had a very kind of strict view about what Yammer could be used for. And you know, on the one hand, we were trying to push people to go to Yammer, but then if they were seen to be on Yammer too much, then that was detrimental to them. And you know, if anything was posted that was seen as social rather than work, that wasn't looked on fondly either. And I spent a lot of time with the executives to, you know, consistently saying you can't take the social out of social, you know, and tried to describe to them, like, imagine it's Monday morning and you get into work and you go to the kitchen to grab a coffee or go to the water cooler, and you see someone you know and you have a chat and you say, hey, how was your weekend? How are the kids? You know, did you go to the game? Whatever that might be, and you have that conversation, and then you say, hey, you know, did you finish that report that we were talking about last week? Can I give you a hand on that? Do you need anything from me? So you know, in the real world, you go from social to work seamlessly, and so you can't expect people to go onto a social tool and not build those relationships, especially if, you know, as you say, you're going across geographies or move into activity-based working where people don't get to see each other in person all that often. You need to build those relationships for the real magic to happen in the network. But you know, I do see the opposite ends of that, and I work with some organisations that are young digital organisations, and anything goes on their networks, and there's no, you know, the senior management don't step in unless, you know, one of the things I do with my clients is an exercise before we launch a social tool of, you know, if we saw these types of things being posted, what would you do? And so we prep senior managers in advance to be ready and, you know, not jumping on everything and trying to take it down. But yeah, I do work with a client who one day I saw somebody at a stand-up desk knitting with no shoes on. You know, and when you work in those kind of organisations, then their social networks are a lot more fun.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm tempted to ask some more questions, but I won't, since this is probably being recorded. Tony, I might just turn to you because you know, you're working in a regulated industry. Is it more of a challenge for you, do you think, to have that social element of internal social networking, or is it really, or is it that's just an excuse? It's no different from any other organisation.
As far as the social internet, I don't think it's any different than any other organization. We obviously have to be careful about what we post on there. It's not something that you know, we want to let client data get out and things like that. So we are a little more watchful of, you know, putting the wrong information out there that people aren't supposed to, and we talk about that frequently in our training whenever we do training on our system, that don't put client data out there and things like that. But that's our major concern, is the transfer of private data on our system that other people shouldn't be seeing, and we keep a good watch on that. And but that's our biggest concern. You know, as far as being regulated, it's all internal in our case, so it's not like it's going out, but we still have to make sure that, you know, certain data and certain documents don't show up on our platform so everybody can see it. So
yeah, so it's not an excuse not to have that that personal, non-work related social interaction on your social network just because you're a bank or an insurance company.
Oh, absolutely not. Yeah, our biggest day is Halloween, when we have everybody dressed up in our Halloween costumes. So, you know, our platform goes sky high with views. We had over 20,000 views on one piece of content where we share pictures of the Halloween costumes that we do, because that's very big in our organization. So even though we're a bank, you know, we get dressed up very silly and very on Halloween. So, you know, like I said, it's our biggest day of the year for our solution, you know, for our system. Like I said, we topped that. We broke last year's record, you know, this year, and we'll probably do it again next year. But the regulations don't really have much to do with it, because it's all internal. And again, we are, one of our values is have fun. So it is, you know, something that we try to keep within the system as well.
You've actually just reminded me that one occasion I was inside a bank, an Australian bank, and I was in the elevator, and a man in a animal suit stepped into the elevator. And we all kind of looked at each other and smiled, and he got out, and it was like, oh, who was that? Oh, that was the CEO. He lost a bet. So I guess anything does go in banking.
That's right.
I might just stick with you, Tony, just from another sort of industry-specific question to see if you have any thoughts. But another issue in the transformation of work at the moment is the growth of the gig economy. These, you know, freelancers like Uber drivers, but there are also, I guess, other professional freelancers these days. So people that don't have a regular workplace. Can you, do you have any thoughts about, and even thinking about your own organisation, you know, if you increase the number of freelancers or you know, gig workers that might come in to do specialist tasks within your business, or maybe some futuristic financial platform which involved, you know, crowdsourcing. Can you see a role for the internal community managers to be involved with that, or does that immediately throw it over the fence and it becomes a external, you know, public-facing community management function?
I think that we have a lot of remote users that even our internal team, the sales team, is remote. A lot of times we go out to our client sites, we go out to our clients, and we work very closely with them. And I think it's part of our solution is, you know, to be able to make it where they can work mobile. So I think that's also a big key with community managers. You have to be able to understand how to make your platform mobile, responsive, and that sort of thing, because you're going to have more of those people. And most businesses these days are mobile, whether they're working at home or going out and visiting client sites. So I don't think that it's related necessarily to throwing it out into an external, because we are an internal solution anyway. Everything in most organizations, at least financial, are very tightly controlled, so we don't have anything that would be outward like that. But I can see that could happen in other industries other than financially regulated, type organizations. And I think that as a community manager, it's being able to make sure that you control it as a collaborative environment. It's going to be required to have that particular platform and be a community manager to keep everybody together in that collaborative environment. So I think they will have a bigger impact and a bigger role with that type of an environment.
So it's not really about who is paying your wage at the end of the day. If you're all sort of working together for an organisation towards a goal,
right?
That internal community is there to bring you all together. I mean,
exactly.
And security and permission, sort of being covered as well. I might just start to loop back the other way and back through, just going to T now. And just wondering if you had any thoughts about, if we do look to the future and we have this changing workforce with people that might be full-time, part-time, casuals, freelancers, from an internal comms point of view and that sort of enterprise strategy of trying to get people all moving in the right direction, do you see any challenges or opportunities around community management?
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because it's one of those roles that I guess you hope that you might get to a point where you don't need them as much as you need them today, almost, because everybody's so familiar with the technology and it's just the way they work. We don't have people to help you with email when you start out in an organisation today. But hopefully in the future, you start with a company, you go to your induction, you're taught all about the tool, and everybody's using it social so much that it's just part of how you work. And so then the community manager role is really about really focused on the community and maybe training or going out there and just trying to sell the tool, which is a lot of what the role is about at the moment. But I think we're a long way from that, and I think the way of working in the future is a huge opportunity for community managers to build their profile. If they can be the ones saying, okay, so we've got remote workers, and can I be involved in their induction to make sure that they know how to use the tool to make it really work for them? Can I be instrumental in helping our people still be as productive as they need to be, even though we have more and more people out and about and working in different places? So I think it's a massive opportunity for community managers to get into that area.
Thanks, T. Rhiannon, maybe we can really bring it down to individual experience, just very quickly, from your point of view as someone who is consulting now, freelancing into organisations. You think about when you first came into the workforce, which I'm sure was just a few years ago. Do you think how has the ability for you to maybe engage through someone's own business social network with employees changed how you work? Has it changed things? Is it better, different, worse?
Look, I think it certainly gives me an opportunity to get up to speed a lot more quickly than probably you did in the past. In the past, you probably sat down with your client, asked 150 questions, and went off and had a whole bunch of meetings. Whereas now, I guess social has enabled me to get a check on the pulse of the organisation, go and have a look, do some scouring, connect with some people, send some messages off, and really get some good insights. And obviously the work that I do is around a lot of enterprise social consulting anyway, so it really gives me an opportunity to, I guess, look in. But from a client perspective too, I guess it can potentially make consultants a lot more effective a lot more quickly. So look, I think it's a positive. Certainly it's different from the world that I worked in 10 or 15 years ago, but I think it's only a positive. And I guess the more and more people that I guess, are around driving adoption, and the more and more organisations that are maturing their social approach, the better the outcome's going to be for everyone, irrespective of whether you're a full-time employee or whether you're a freelance consultant, casual employee that's coming in to do something and getting out.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, now, just in the interest of time, I'm just going to hand back to Anne, who's just been listening into, I guess, my questions, and just to see if you've got any wrap-up comments and your own observations.
Yeah, I think, thanks, James. It's been a really interesting session, and I think Tony's been able to add a perspective on it that often, due to the size of our organisations in Australia, we don't have that amplification. But I think what we're hearing across everybody is this maturity of the community management role. It's sort of started off as a percentage of a full-time role, but we're starting to get, you know, executive teams, people embedded in executive teams. We're starting to look at the skills of it, but I think we also do have a lot of work to do. I'm always the optimist, but I do believe we need to upskill community managers more around analytics, implications, and just their own skills, which then will filter across organisations. And I think that's of particular interest to certainly my own sort of academic side of research, is how that will evolve. But I think it's been a great opportunity to hear everybody's thoughts, experiences, and the more we have of this, and congratulations to the team who've pulled all this together. I think this is just a great way to start getting our message out further and to support community managers further, because sometimes I think it's a bit lonely out there on your own, or it just doesn't feel, yeah, you feel like you're the only one on Yammer asking questions to people, or if you're on Yammer these days, you might be the only one. Sorry, that was just a bit of a stab at something. But I just want to thank the panel. So Tony, I'll just pass to you for a quick final comment. Any thoughts as we lead into the future of community management?
Well, I think it's a growing field. I'm, excited to be involved in it. I've been doing some external community management with some Facebook groups that I have, and building, my podcast community. So I see it as a very viable and a big group or good business that people need to focus more on. I think it's starting to grow. I think businesses are recognizing the need to bring in social in not just their environment, but also in a lot of the applications. A lot of the applications that I'm seeing now in financial services and other tools are going socially related. They've got some sort of social component to them, and I think it's becoming a bigger benefit to the companies to have a community management role somewhere within there, whether it's small and starting out or getting very big. But I think it's starting to grow in the recognition of that role. So.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, and thank you very much for your participation. I'm sure it's.
Thank you.
Is it dinner time for you, or?
Well, it's almost bedtime. It's
almost bedtime.
Almost 10 o'clock. So.
Right, okay. Well, thank you very much for staying up and being part of the panel. We really appreciate it.
Great,
Thanks,
thank
Tony.
you for having me.
T, how about some final comments? What's the future of community management for you in this evolving workplace that we're dealing with?
I think it's just going to get bigger and bigger. I often say to my clients, if I were to go back in-house and actually have a job, which I have no intention of doing, it would be to be a community manager, because it's almost like the fun that it was 15 years ago in internal comms, when people didn't really know what the job was, and you had a lot of freedom to do things and really make exciting things happen and make a difference. And I think that's where community management is today. It's that role that just got the finger on the pulse, knows what's going on, can make so much difference and be so influential, and all that connecting of people. So I think it's an awesome role for anyone to be doing, and it's going to get more and more strategic and more important. So I'd get in now and then have an amazing role in the future.
Great. Well, that was a good plug, everybody. Get in now and have an amazing role in your future. Why not be a community manager? We could start a tagline for that. I'm going to hand back. Sorry, Rhiannon and James, I won't give you a final comment, because I think you've commented pretty much along the same lines. I'm going to hand back to Cherie. Are you ready to pick it up and take it to the next panel?
Yes, thank you guys. We just want to do, we forgot in the beginning of the panel just to thank our sponsors that kind of helped bring everything together today. So just a quick shout out to Salesforce Community Cloud, Higher Logic, Online Community Results, Sprout Social, Vanilla Forums, Zoom, communitymanagement.org, socialmedia.org, Amplify Yourself, Igloo, an internet you actually like, Meshfire, and also My Community Manager. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you in a few minutes in the next panel.